We're live.
We're live. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Off the Record with Kyle Sells Biz. Have a very, very special guest with me today, Miss Nina Segura. I'm going to get to her in a second, but I'm so excited, to have this session with you guys each and every week, each and every Wednesday. As you know, our sessions talk about everything about mergers and acquisitions, business growth, business strategy, business exits, how to grow organically, how to go through acquisition. There's a lot of aspects to building a business, and no one knows it all. That's why I bring on the experts like Nina, we're gonna see today, and she's gonna share some great information about her experience as it relates to mergers and acquisitions. She has a wealth of knowledge that she's gonna share today. So I want to thank her for joining us today. How are you doing today, Nina?
Good morning, Kyle. It's an honor. Thank you for having me on your show. I had heard your show a couple of times, and I enjoyed the guest, and I think you're an amazing interviewer. So I'm really excited to connect with you today.
Well, I'm excited to connect with you from the Sunshine State of Florida. And we are streaming on multiple channels, and you have some good colleagues already popping in here. Hi, Linda. How's it going?
Hi.
Marcello. So we're streaming live on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube, as well as Twitter. So anywhere you post your comments and questions, we will get it in our dashboard. So be sure to post your questions and comments, and we will definitely get to you. So a little bit about Nina. She's the best-selling author of Every Day is Friday, the ACTT Blueprint for Leaders. And she also is the founder of Metaspire Consulting. I would like to get some insight into that name. Maybe you could probably share a little bit about that. I don't know if that was, if you had a glimpse into the future as far as everything is in metaverse now, but Metaspire.
I wish I had that much knowledge at the time, but no, I didn't.
I know.
I'm happy to tell you that, whatever you want to know.
You're probably a visionary. That's what it's all about. That's why folks need to work with you, right?
I love it. Yeah. Well, actually, the name I had originally was Aspire Consulting, and I got a nice little cease and desist letter from McKinsey saying, "We own that name, please."
Oh.
So I was like, what goes beyond aspirations? And then so I just put Metaspire in front of it too.
Well, they did you a favor. How about that?
Yeah, they did me a favor, I guess. Yeah, I like it. Thank you, Kyle.
So Nina's team has cultivated transformational change for some of the largest companies. Some of these names you guys are going to know about. So American Express is one of them. JP Morgan, Hewlett Packard, and she saved them hundreds of millions of dollars in OPEX savings. Nina also worked with mid-market companies, and just recently she increased one of her clients' revenue by 174%. in 18 months through strategic planning, leadership team, and cultural alignment, ultimately providing the organization with the ability to be transitioned to the next generation of leaders. And your resume goes on and on here. Nina, Sigma, Black Belt, the Coaches Training Institute certifications, and you've been featured on Forbes magazine, Harvard Business Review, American Express, Open Forum, CBS, iHeartRadio. Should I keep going? Should I stop?
Yeah, please stop. It's very long.
It's iTunes, and also Kyle Sells Biz. Let's add that to the resume. How about that?
Yay! Look at one.
So what an accomplishment. And I feel very honored and blessed to have you here. And those of you that are listening in should be privileged to have Nina at your disposal for your questions and comments. So I like to start off each segment by getting to know a little bit about my guests, your journey, how you got to this point, a stage in your career. So maybe you can start off by sharing, from the start of your career to your current role as Chief Strategy Officer, like how do you get to that position, and just share some insight into your journey, if you may.
Well, it's interesting, Kyle. I think you're also a visionary because when you entitled this talking about harmony, and I actually grew up, my family were musicians. My mother was a singer and played piano. My dad played guitar, sort of like Partridge Family style. I know I'm dating myself. So, we on Sundays, we would play music. And I think that that's really what it's all about, is looking and listening for what are the beats in a conversation in an organization. What are the, who's singing what, alto, soprano, who's doing what, right? And also listening for disharmony. And I think that really, that music has been one of the keys to transitioning into how to align strategy and culture so that so that we're not only helping executives with getting their needs met before they even ask, but also, that the team is feeling inspired and wants to be connected to the value that the company brings to its best customers. So
It's
yeah.
almost, it's funny you mention that because, running a company is almost like an orchestra, right? You want to have everyone in harmony, everyone beating to the same drum, keeping on pace, right? Everyone roaring in the right direction. So I love that analogy, bringing music into it. Maybe you can share with us, what key events or experiences has most influenced your approach to business transformation?
I think also just, I mean, I'm happy to share, but like, the other part of the way I grew up was my mother was Italian, and a Catholic and a Democrat, and my dad was Jewish and a Republican. And so I grew up with a very wide range of being able to listen for a diverse set of views, and how to see what were the overlaps and what came together. And so when you're thinking about it, say, for example, if you're an organizational leader and you're looking at how can I streamline my organization and create profitability, you're really listening for that, that which is creating the most value for you, and whom in your organization are the key influencers, and how are they motivated, and how is what we're doing, creating a better impact for not just the company's bottom line, but the world, right? And the community of which the people in your organization, the best and the brightest. How are we keeping the best and the brightest attuned to what's happening with our best customers? And so usually when you look at that value stream, and it's really it seems very simple, right? But then, the people have different ways of leading. And when we recognize that it's not always dominant ways of leading, it's not always clear. Sometimes the line isn't always sequential and straight. And when we can stay with the unknowing and be connected to our purpose and why we even say yes to this organization in the first place, that is what will bring us to what we're looking for. And typically that's a smooth integration, that's a smooth exit planning, that's a smooth growth strategy, whatever it is.
Awesome.
Did I answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Let's
All
get
right.
into now. We have a lot to cover. We're going to try to. If we don't get to it, we'd love to have you back another time. But there's a lot of information you have to share, so we would try to give you guys information on a high level. Let's talk about strengthening organization ownership and accountability for M&A success. Can you give your perspective on that and importance of having great organizational accountability, so to speak, in the M&A process?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I was recently selected for a TEDx talk and as a finalist, and I'm really excited about it. But one of the
Congratulations.
things that, thank you, I didn't think I was going to get it, so I'm really happy about it. Now I have to figure out what I'm going to say. But one of the things they liked was that I kind of broke down the leadership to the acronym POWER, POWER, and really reclaiming that from a perspective of co-creating with, like you and I. We hit it off right away. And what are some ways in which we are serving the same people and we can do it better together? And so in terms of accountability, what I notice a lot of times is what saves people from the blame game of operations, doesn't get along with marketing, or sales and marketing are a disconnect. And that's really honestly how my company saved other companies hundreds of millions of dollars, is looking at, what were the fragmentations, the handoffs and linkages between departments? How can we make those more smooth? And so in full transparency, really it's looking at, who's best to make the decisions. And it's not always based on a title, right? And even that word title came from entitlement, right? Like so anyway, the acronym POWER, P is for patience. And if we can't be patient, at least pause a second and get connected to, the greater why. Why are you here? Why does the company exist? Who are we serving? And looking at how do we define responsibilities as it relates to, clear structure. And wouldn't you want to be accountable for that? Wouldn't you want to take pride in what those handoffs and linkages are so that you can do the best you can? Because when the organization wins, we all win, right? So, so in terms of accountability, the biggest mistake I see leaders make is they feel like they have to micromanage or tell people how to do things. And you see this a lot now, because I think I just read a stat that 27% of leaders feel comfortable leading in a hybrid environment. And that's very low. So, we're getting, yeah, I would say younger leaders, I'm a Gen X, so I, can vibe with both, the millennials and, the baby boomers. But I think the biggest mistake we make in terms of accountability is just describing what the outcomes are that we're looking for and inspiring others to those outcomes so that they can, look at what is it that I'm doing that's creating the most value. And foster transparency is really important, because if we're looking at, I have to protect my kingdom, I have to protect my span of control, if there's fear involved in that, that really needs to be looked at, because otherwise we won't have a robust governance framework. We won't be able to have clear decision-making structures. And without that, that is really probably one of the most common pitfalls in M&A, because you don't have the centralized accountability that you really need.
Interesting. Maybe you can share, Nina, some practical strategies that company use to strengthen their organizational ownership and accountability. Like, for example, in my firm, we incorporate EOS as part of our, so everyone is held accountable. We all have responsibility for different aspects of the business, and as well as one person responsible for a certain task or department, so to speak. So I don't know maybe you can share some strategies that you have used with your clients.
Yeah, EOS is interesting. There's a lot of people that like it and it works for them. And some folks just prefer a different way. One of the things that I think is different is language. So for us, I think in EOS, you have big rocks and little rocks. And so for us, I don't want a rock. I don't know what I would do with a rock. All I can think of is The Sopranos, where I know that one of the actors used to put rocks on the bottom of his shoes, so it upset him. So he always looked upset all the time. So to me, that's not a good thing. But like for us, it's like big wins and quick wins, right? So, when we're looking at, depending on where you are. So if you're considering an M&A, that's really the best place to start is now. And if you're post M&A, it's really interesting, because maybe some of those changes weren't your idea, and that's okay. It's okay to say, this wasn't my idea. What can I do to co-create from what I have? And so I think everyone has a beautiful gift. Look at our fingerprints. No fingerprints are alike, and so no M&A is alike. And so it's really looking at. And I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the comments. If there's comments. But what's EOS? Okay, yeah. So you can talk about that. There's multiple ways to look at it. I think EOS is a great way to look at it. I prefer more of an integrated approach of, being really cautious about, what the mystery of M&A is, right? It's an iteration. And so we don't come in with, okay, this is the way we've always done it. And not EOS, I'm not saying EOS does that, but I prefer a little bit more flexible way and a more customized way of leading as it relates to helping a business.
There's no one size fits
Right.
all, right? So I like the
Right.
fluidity that you're suggesting. So I believe it was Nicole. So I put a link in there on YouTube, which kind of explains EOS is called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. I actually did a segment on EOS maybe 2 weeks ago, so I'll make sure to post the link so you can learn about that. Yeah. So let's get into mergers and acquisitions. I don't know where you want to take it from, either prior sale, during the merger, or post merger. I put it out to you, Nina, where you want to start as far as
well, I just want to answer Miriam's question too. So at mergers and at the end acquisition. So M&A is mergers and acquisitions. So in large companies, what'll happen is, sometimes they'll outsource, for example, a marketing or subcontract marketing content because that's not their core competency. So it works a little different in bigger companies. So So then maybe they don't want to work with that subcontractor anymore, and they want to centralize all of that content and take it back to the main organization. And so that essentially they're acquiring the way that that work went. And if there's machines involved and things like that. So in larger companies, the acquisition can be a little different. It can be based on intellectual property and process, not necessarily actually purchasing a company per se, because we're going to end that contract and we're going to just take the work back that was ours to begin with. And hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's funny. Good point, Dan. I actually, on the acquisition side and the buy side, I do share my clients that if you don't have good structure and good processing and good culture in your company, if you still need to fix the alignments within your team, and now you go and you acquire another company, now you're bringing a company to your business that your business is already misaligned, is going to create more issues than you anticipated, right? So you want to make sure you have, your systems in order first before you actually incorporate another business. But you can essentially sink your own ship, right?
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that.
100%. And I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that I see Dominic's question as well, and we'll get to it. I think that is one of the biggest mistakes is we look at the financials when we're doing a lot of folks. I mean, we need to look at financials, right? We need to look at the strategy and the financials. We need to do that. And it needs to be aligned with where the organization is headed. So for example, if you're an automobile distributor, maybe now you're looking at trucking, or you're looking at, other industries to acquire, right? And so that makes sense that you would do that. But what happens is the way that trucking industry works may not really necessarily align with the way a resident or a private home, a private, buyer, B2B and B2C are two different things. So business to business and business to consumer are two different things. So the way a person who's driving a truck may approach that, the way they want to be rewarded might be a little different than the way that you want to reward, the way you would not reward a salesperson who's selling a car to a person, right? So it's really, reward, the way that we motivate people, think about basic behavioral modification. We're doing something that is supporting that person in a positive way. And sometimes there's negative ways, right, that we want to lead someone behaviorally. So it's really important. And I see this happen a lot where there's sort of culture wars, but you look at Zoom. I mean, Zoom acquired small organizations, and they let them just run it the way they wanted to run it. The values were strong enough in the beginning to be able to say, this is the values match for us. Yes. And it makes financial sense. Hey, what do we want you to change? Not much. You're doing great. And so I think about two concentric circles, the organization that's purchasing it and the organizations that's being purchased, there should be, from a values perspective, that middle part. And if it is, then that's what's really what you want to build. That's the yes and, right? That's where improv comes in, where we're looking at, well, what else can we do based on this peanut butter and jelly, so to speak, right? I hope that made sense.
Yeah, a lot of what you're talking about, Nina, is cultural alignment. Right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
You may have certain culture and philosophy within your company, and or you're incorporating another business may have a different culture. How do you go about that process? And then one person had a question which actually ties into this. So I think as Dominic said, that asks, should one person lead the charge with post M&A, or if having a team is better? Maybe you can probably talk to those 2 points.
Yeah. So I love that question, Dominic. Thank you. And for everyone, it really does help when you put questions and comments in the chat, because it makes us, at least it makes me feel like I'm actually helping someone. So thank you. Yeah. So I would say this. I would say we're almost always in M&A, you have an executive sponsor. So someone purchased something and they want to make sure they get that return on investment in whatever time frame they're thinking. So that essentially is your executive sponsor. Then typically you'd have a sponsor who's then, going back to EOS would be the integrator, the person who's making sure that things are actually integrated in a way that, and in large organizations, you're going to have teams of this, but typically you'll have an executive sponsor and a program sponsor or an M&A sponsor who's actually integrating. But I do think that you need a team and people at every level to understand what's happening, because oftentimes, and you've probably seen this in your own professional lives, if you're on the front lines of change, sometimes you don't understand why you have to use 2 and 3 different systems, because we're still working on integrating the technologies, right? And if something was acquired or what have you. And it's really important to me that if you're, especially if you're customer facing, that there is someone that's influential at a customer facing level that is involved in the M&A planning, so that you are really clear on what it looks like from the customer's perspective. Because you might think but you don't know unless you're talking to the people who are customer facing. I hope that answers the question. And there's multiple roles as well, but I would say those are the main ones. What do you think, Kyle?
Well, I was going to kind of ask you about, if you don't do the right assessments of your team and assess the culture of the company you're acquiring, like, can you talk about the impact and what can happen by lack of preparation, lack of being aligned correctly? Like, talk about the impact of that.
Well, just look at these are statistics you can look up, but like in 2021, global M&A activity soared, right? It was a record breaking, like, I don't know, almost $6 trillion. And there was like, I don't know, maybe 60,000 M&A deals taking place. Of those, there was a lot of activity, but the reality is that I think 90% of the M&A activities fell short. And what we found in the research, and what the research shows, is that there's a disconnect between theory and practice. What was really great, and I highly recommend this book if you're interested at all in the work that we're talking about, which is called The Fifth Discipline Field Book, by Peter Singay, who was someone I studied under when I was studying under looking at leadership and all that. And in that book, he talks about the importance of creating a shared vision, and how I'm building in two-way feedback loops, so that we're really, that the good strategy doesn't fail. And so that's what I mean between theory and practice. You have an intention, and then you have attention, and that attention needs to be placed on listening and also iterating. So that's what I would say the answer to that in a nutshell.
And Nina, you mentioned an acronym POWER. I just caught the first P for patience. Can you share what the rest of that is?
Yeah, and just to be clear, if most people know me, I'm not necessarily the most patient person. So I'm just telling what the research shows. But I do, like I said, I mean, I do practice pausing and collecting my thoughts, aligning within myself first before I try to speak, to support the intellect in the room. It's called The Fifth Discipline by Peter Singay, Dominic.
I put in the book, the link to the book.
Oh wow, you're fast. Okay, so O is for openness, and so this what I'm talking about. You can read about this. The book is called The Athena Doctrine, and they did 64 across the globe. They did 64,000 interviews. It was a double-blind study, and I just am summarizing basically what the study said, which is what is being wanted as it relates to leadership. And so, think about it, right? Like you walk into your leader's office, and, wouldn't you desire them to be patient or pausing before they just spout out a bunch of, hey, you reached that goal. Great. Here's another goal, right? So we really want to, have that openness to say, to be open to what's in the room. And again, if you've never taken improv, I highly recommend it. It's one of the best things I think, and I've done just from a leadership perspective, is being open to co-creating with the people around you. And the first role is yes and so being open that my way might not be the best way. And a lot of leaders, and just think about this for a second. What would the world be like if everyone, instead of getting positional about how things got done, we were just open to what we wanted? We would have so much more connection, and there wouldn't be this push and pull in organizations, right? Think about that. So anyway, so W is for being warm, and being inviting and welcoming. And so even when you're ready, like Brene Brown says, you're ready to rumble, even when there's conflict, that to hold the ego and the defensiveness and the blame, to hold and pause that, and to be warm and welcoming, even and knowing that conflict is just a sign that something greater is going to happen. So warmness is really a presence, right, of that. And so P is for patience, O is for openness, W is for warm, being warm, and then E is for expressiveness, which really comes down to empowerment. And this is where we talk about power. If you think about the history of leadership, I'll just try to quintessentialize this, but we started in tribes, right? And so oftentimes the person who was physically stronger, dominated, right? And got the biggest, I don't know, meats or whatever it was. And then leadership then went to monarchs. And so things are done by decree or entitlement. But things started shifting really fast in the civil rights movement when, women and diverse folks came into the workforce. And so, there is a much wider range and a much beautiful range. And I won't get into all that. I can talk about that for a long time in terms of, how we know by now that organizations do better and make more money when there's diversity and that there's reflective leadership, right? Who we're serving is also who's at the top. And there's many studies about that. So in any case, let me get back to the POWER acronym. So being expressive and being empowered is really about internal empowerment first, and to be undefended when we're expressing something that we really believe. And we can talk about that another time, Kyle. But anyway, and then the last R, the R is for responsible and being responsive, because without that, I can be expressive and be angry and shout about how these numbers need to get met, but without being responsible for my impact, even if my impact is unintentional, that expressiveness doesn't fly. I can't be patient, and I cannot be open, and I cannot be warm. So responsible really ties everything together in a nice little package. So that's the acronym POWER, POWER.
Love it. And for those of you that missed that, we do have some links in the chat so you can get the book and so on. Nina, I think we have a part 2, because we have about 10 minutes left here, and we haven't gotten through our entire subject matter for today. But it's great though, because a lot of questions, a lot of comments. So as long as we're providing value and folks are loving this, it's great. So at least we serve a purpose here. So if you see Yoram Storm, I hope I'm saying first name correctly. So he has a question about, and I'll repeat for those that in the list that are going to watch it on audio on Spotify and so on. But if you acquire a company which has potential, but has been poorly managed to the point where employees no longer take any notice of directors and just do what they want to do, what is the best approach to turn this around? Is it true that if you fire one person, the reset are going, I guess it's the rest are going to fall in line? Should you try to empower the most senior person, even though they may not be up to scratch, because he needs somebody to stay the ship?
That is such a great question. I mean, that we could spend lots of time on that, and I really would love to get my hands around it. So feel free to connect with me offline so I can understand it a little bit more. I'd like to, but think about this. There's always driving and constraining forces in an organization. So when we go into an organization, we do what is called a force field analysis, and we look at, what is constraining the organization so that we have a high performing team, or what's restraining it. So what's creating the impact that we want. So we look at management processes, reward systems. There's tons of things that we look at, and what you're pointing to is actually the leadership itself and the behaviors of the folks that are there. And so what I hear you pointing to is, look, if we let someone go, then we're saying enough of this, right? This behavior will not be tolerated. And I understand that makes sense. And it also makes sense that we have both, right? Some organizations, for me, I respond better to honey. What is it? Bees attract more bees with honey. What is that? Whatever that thing is, so to me, I'd rather have the carrot than the stick. I think you want to attract people that want to be motivated that way. And I understand that sometimes people need to be invited to another company. So I think it's both. I think it's yes. I do think that if you're empowering someone, I would empower the highest performer. That is another big problem. Sometimes organizations spend money on the low performer instead of raising up the person who has the most potential and investing in them. So I think, think about that. And I know that's, something we do. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but I think that the best leaders look at, really looking at, what is that wheel, and is it really what we need to drive the car? So thinking about, I think you go with what works and what adds value versus what doesn't. I think we spend too much time on what doesn't add value in it, and at the end of the day, life is short, right, Kyle? So we want to spend time with the people who are getting us to the next level, not
Life is short and time is short. How about how about so Raymond Alley, how are you doing, Raymond? Glad you can make it. So he asks, how do you address deficiency of skills of the existing team? That's a great question. I could take that
Oh
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
a
Generally,
couple of things.
you train or yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, whenever we do an assessment in an organization, I mentioned the force field analysis we do at a sort of a cultural level, but what we also do is we do a leadership assessment on all of the leaders so they rate themselves, and then the people that know them the best also rate them on strategic thinking, change leadership, influence, process thinking, which you absolutely 100% need when you can only get to a certain level without thinking about process. You will hit a lull. And so and leadership is different than skill. And we do, I know we work with a lot of HR leaders too, and they're looking at knowledge, skills, and abilities. Those are important, the KSAs, but we're also looking at leadership skills, because right now, you think about this, whenever an M&A happens, you're touching the grief cycle. And so productivity is going to decline based on where the team feels they are. So, people can feel angry or try to bargain, right? And all that's happening. Actually, we're doing, if I may plug, we're on August 1st in honor of Women's Equality Day, we're doing a master class on leading successful change leadership as it relates to resisting change. So I'll put that link in the chat. Yeah, it's just for women right now, but if there's enough demand and other folks are interested, I'm happy to, to do another one. But we're doing a class specifically on how to lead your own the resistance to change while leading others. So I hope that answered the question. If it didn't, put it in the chat.
Yeah, definitely. I think, as an organization, you have to first establish what the true vision and culture is of your company. And to Nina's point is that there's a lot of skilled workmen and workwomen and managers and so on. Ideally, you want to find someone that's skilled for the position, but most importantly, are they a fit for the organization? You can bring in someone into the organization that actually creates a cancer, so to speak, right? So if the folks in the existing team doesn't fit what you're about, there's an opportunity to train them and give them some time. So you want to have assessments. You call them, I'm forgetting the right name you call it, Nina, but you want to have your annual review, right?
Yeah.
Give them opportunity to get back in line or get in because it's hard to find good talent. So if you can train them and get them up to speed, if not, you have to figure out a way to quietly have them be replaced and find someone else that's a better fit for the position.
Yeah, and I think what happens is people get stuck in two things, and this is part of the founder's trap. Well, that person was loyal to me all these years, and sometimes the executive team doesn't want to let them go. But the truth is that you don't have to let someone go. You can look at what are they good at, and what can we move maybe to a lateral position, or something in a different department that might be good. Now, if that person is creating triangulation in the organization where they don't like what is said, so they go to someone else, and then if they're causing like a sort of a cancer. Thank you, Kyle, for posting that. Then we have to look at how important the cultural values are, and what was said before is sometimes this is not the right place for you. But usually what happens is we get caught up in loyalty of we're trying to honor that person's loyalty, but then we think that person might not get us to the next level. So we have to honor what is best for the organization as well. And then the other thing that people get into is, well, they have this skill and I need that skill, and that skill is hard to find. Well, yeah, maybe it is hard to find, but if you look now, it's going to be even harder to find if you wait, right? So, or, looking at who's in the organization that's going to be next gen anyway, and really taking that seriously so that the company outlasts the founder's years. We did a lot of cultural stuff today.
Yeah, which is actually good. We have one of our core values in our company is that business is personal, right? We want our clients to know we're here for you personally. And to think about it, why are you in business for the first place, right? To support yourself, support your family, support your community, provide jobs, and so on. So there's a personal touch, a personal aspect to being in business. I know with the advance of technology and software and innovation, that's always going to play a role in things, but there's a lot to say when you can have a personal relationship, personal professional relationship, I should say, with your clients, coworkers, and so on. Because you saw during COVID where a lot of employees that didn't have loyalty to their employer, some of them was not willing to take a pay cut just so they can ride, the bad water, so to speak, until the pandemic is over and the business turn around, they were gone. And they will see some companies where the employees actually decided, I'm going to stick with this company because, we are fulfilling the need. I like what we're doing. I believe in the vision. I believe in the future of the company. So I'm going to stick through it. And then when the company turned around, those employees were empowered and, they got put back to where they were as far as the compensation goes. So there's a lot to it as opposed to just looking at every customer employee as a dollar sign, so to speak.
I love that. I think that's why we connected right away, Kyle. I also just want to see that I see Raymond's question here. Generally, do you retain an existing team, exit packages for existing team, or make new hires? I mean, I think, look, there's a lot of value of retaining the existing team, Raymond. So, I mean, look, there's years and years of knowledge that we won't know. And that's why process, I do process architecture personally, and I think it's very important. And I think that it's important to have if you were to build a building, you would have an architect come in and architect what that house is going to look like, or that commercial building. In the same way, organizations need architecture. And so I think it's really important to look at retaining as much knowledge as you can within that architecture. And so that knowledge stays with the organization, and that's what usually happens. But in terms of retaining the team, I think there's a lot of value for retaining the existing team and retraining them and uptraining and doing stay interviews. Kyle mentioned the yearly reviews. So, and it sounds like, Kyle, you are not the person to wait for a yearly review to support people and their skills. And it sounds like that's something that Kyle just does, which in part of a normal conversation, which is who are we talking to? And what is it that they're wanting, and how I go back to the concentric circles again, and how does that align with, what that organization is needing as it relates to the next generation. And we didn't even get into the organizational life cycle, but, to keep a company in its prime, regardless of where you are in the organization life cycle, we want to look at, where the juiciest part of the market and the customer segmentation is. And so that's a deep conversation about those overlaps. I do think it is important to try to retain the existing team, unless that team is really not going to get you to the next level. I do think exit packages are important. And yeah, new hires are important too. But I think at the end of the day, everything happens in cycles. So there's an employee life cycle, there's a customer life cycle, there's an organizational life cycle. So we have to look at all of those things when we're looking at an organization. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, you're welcome to get with me offline.
I have one final question for you, Nina. I know we are at the top of our time here, and I'd love to have you back to continue this conversation. But we all love stories, and people learn in different ways. I mean, you have an illustrious career in this space. Maybe you can share a short story on how your experience in the work that you do has helped the business in their M&A transaction or merger or growth of their company, for that matter.
I'm sorry. So you want an M&A
You have
story?
a story that you can talk about a company that either grow organically by bringing on talent or by acquiring it. Any story you can tell that that ties into what we've been talking about today.
Yeah. Quickly. Well, I mean, I told a large, blue chip company story early in the beginning when we talked about, centralizing some things that were subcontracted out. And that was, that was a $67 million savings to the organization. And so, and that was accomplished, right? It's one thing to write a business case for $67 million, quite another to influence change, and for the executive council to see that this is important to uptrain the people that worked for the company, and to actually look at certain roles that were not providing value, and that those folks needed to find other positions in the company. So that was at Hewlett Packard that I explained that story. And then recently there's a local construction company. This person was 6 million in sales. She really loved her team. She wanted to get to 20 million. I think she wanted to get to 40 million. Actually, she's at 22 million now. And so she was very committed to getting a certain valuation that she wouldn't have gotten. She had the majority of her customers, when people are looking to acquire, and Kyle knows this, most of your customers, you can't have one big customer. You have to have a good, well-defined, balanced customer base. So she didn't have that. So we brought in commercial sales. She was just doing more residential sales, repair, and re-roof. And so we had to bring in other talent that were and look at what was the monthly reoccurring revenue going to be, and did it need to be, so that we could wait for those commercial checks to come in, because they're larger, but they take longer to get. So there was a lot of work that we did from an architecture perspective to make sure that worked. We also evaluated the leadership team, and of the 3 people that we decided to coach, actually 4 of the 4 people that were coached, 3 of them were elevated. 1 was asked to transition. They all got promotions and raises. And so 1 was asked to transition away from the company. And so, brought in a new sales leader, brought in a new sales team that was aligned with her values. Second gen came in and is learning the business. So, statistically, that's difficult, right? I mean, look at Chick-fil-A. I think they're on maybe the 4th generation now. And so each time a generation comes in, the statistics get smaller and smaller. So it's really important to look at what are those companies doing right, that are family-owned businesses, so that you can learn from that. So in any case, second gen's in now, learning the business. And she wanted profit sharing, which is a huge motivator. And so that is being implemented. And so she, so I mean, those are some of the things. And then the other thing we did, which is really important, is that, people thought that she wanted to not have a bunch of assistants when she came in. That's what she wanted. So she wanted the team to do things without being asked. And so now the way that we did that, one of the ways we did that was get really clear on what are those measures of success, and to build a dashboard with the technology team to make sure that we're looking at measures that matter. And each leader is responsible, and a lot of organizations have this, right? In which each leader is responsible for providing an update on those measures of success. But in that case, she didn't have that. And I think a picture paints 1,000 words. When we have something visual to look at, it's, those are the facts we're looking at it. And then the other thing that she did was she rewarded the organizational leaders to get together and brainstorm prior to those sessions, so that they were supporting each other with the results. And so there was a lot of collaboration that was happening, and she was rewarding.
I love that. I know, watching the time, so we're going to wrap up, Nina, but I always love stories. I just feel really fired up when I hear about 2nd and 3rd and 4th generation companies, and just grooming the younger generation and helping them let's carry on a legacy of these awesome businesses.
Yes.
So I do want to thank you for being here, Nina. As always, we have to do a part 2 to this to bring you back. We haven't even got through half of what we wanted to go over, but at least we got some questions answered and was able to provide some value. So we are here each and every Wednesday with a special guest, experts such as Nina. We'd love to have you back at a certain point. There are some links in the chat where you can keep up as far as our upcoming events. And Nina, I don't know, I know August 1st, I put that in the chat.
Thank you.
On secrets of successful change leadership. So I'm looking forward to that. But thank you so much for being our special guest today.
And thank you everybody for the comments as well. It really helps a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great day, Nina. And all of you guys.
Bye,
appreciate it. Thank you.